Hello and welcome back to The Drift. I'm Pablo, your host, and in today's episode, we are, experimenting a little bit more, but this time we're not gonna try to record at a pub. So as you can see, I'm back in the traditional Telco Drift recording studio. But today we will discuss MWC, so some best practices, what to avoid, some tech that I don't expect to see this year, and then some favorite places. So again, we are trying to mix and match a little bit compared to the standard format of the podcast. And by the way, on this, the pub experiment has been a success or has been a failure. I would say 50-50. Now, I got like few people telling me the the audio is incomprehensible, which fair enough, it is. But at the same time, the fact that I got some feedback on like, we cannot understand you, it kind of proves that some people are listening and it proves that people are interested in what we discuss in the drift. So again, bit of a failure, bit of success. We're gonna get back with another episode at a pub later on, but not today. So hopefully this time around, the quality of the audio is good enough, and the content is gonna be also interesting because it has to be good, part of the podcast gig. Anyways, so to get started, my experience at MWC has been that of an analyst. And so probably some of the things or most of the things that I say will resonate with a few colleagues within the analyst community, but hopefully some of the suggestions will have a broader appeal. Now, we all know some of the basics of MWC. You've probably heard that tons of times. It's about get comfortable shoes. You're going to have to walk a lot, in the Fiera outside in Barcelona. Bring water. Again, pretty obvious stuff. Something I think is a bit more interesting and I think should be an easy win, but I still see people kind of failing it, is remember to be branded. So, you're there, you're kind of representative whatever company you are. So it's an easy way for you to get sort of noticed quickly. Now, some companies are really good at branding. T-Mobile definitely jumps to mind. Very good at branding. But another company that I want to flag out is Red Hat for me. That just because those red hats are like pretty cool and you see them, you immediately recognize the company. So there are also some not as successful stories in terms of branding. And I've seen some people like pushing it too far and, trying to get a little bit more of a, blue collar style of branding, which I personally, I don't really resonate with that. But hey, as long as you get recognized and you're happy with that, nice and easy. So something else that I think it's quite important for a lot of people is like be light. So many times I bring in my laptop for a ride, and at the end of the day, I've never actually used it. So unless you really know that you need to have like those PowerPoint slides or presentation or whatever, just leave it be. More likely you're not gonna need it. And very practical consideration, don't forget to pick up your travel card at the airport. Nice and easy. And that brings to the next point. The best way to get to the Fiera is by far public transport. You got the train that gets there. It's cheap, it's frequent, you're avoiding traffic jam. And, same thing applies at the end of most days. Instead of queuing 10 minutes for a taxi, just hop on a train. And it's also like a good opportunity for networking. Now, last consideration for the show, and probably then we're going to start talking about some things to avoid, is that the preparation to MWC for me is the hardest part. Creating meetings, choosing people, so on and so forth. But once you're there, so to use a sport analogy, it's game day. So it's not more about training, just enjoy the moment, just have a good time and do whatever you have to do. If you have to say, if you have to present, if you have to do whatever, this should be like a nice moment for you. It should not be a burden. If you feel MWC as a burden, probably you shouldn't be there. And oh no, really, really last point. So as you can see, I have a script this time around. So again, getting more and more professional with my podcasting. Part of the show for me is about learning. So don't be afraid of saying, I don't know something. Don't be afraid of, accept that there are going to be a lot of things on the show that you don't know. And that is a good opportunity for you to, start tipping your toes there and then start learning later on. And of course, as the few of you that I've already met at the show, you need to find time to catch up with friends, and make sure that you reach out to them, and that you're setting up some time aside if you can to catch coffee, catch a drink. Have like a long list of people that I need to catch up with at the show, from pretty much from all over the world, and that's like one of the reasons why I actually really enjoy the show. Now, moving on, something slightly different. So, what to avoid? Again, I'm skipping the usual stuff, right? Everyone talks about security scans, blah blah blah. That's true for every city, so standard. Not talk about that. But something else that I really people will start avoiding, and I've done that before when I was young and naive. Now I'm like old and wise, if you want. That's how you learn, right? Avoid the avoid a cringy selfie in front of the fear. Like everyone is doing that, and it's not really that beautiful, the fear from the outside. So get some more interesting pictures. Otherwise, you have like LinkedIn flooded with like people taking selfie in front of the fear. It's like, come on, guys, we can do something better, or use some AI. I don't know, anything else, but make sure that you can stand out a little bit more. Now, another thing to avoid, and it's very basic, but at the end of the day, probably will say from 5 onwards, people start having, happy hours, beers, wine, and such. I'm not sure what is the official time that sort of the party starts. Probably it's going to be around 5:30. But just be prepared that if you're working after sort of that 5:30, and you're having meetings, there is a good chance that people having a meeting with you will actually want to go for a drink, and then you're gonna be having a meeting with people in the next room or in the next exhibition area, just having a good time. So probably not the best feeling in the world, but work is priority, and then there is whatever else you have to do. Now, this is like very different from usual pod, if you want. Now let's talk a little bit about something that is more like tech related. So I recently run a poll on LinkedIn, where I ask my audience what do you want and which direction you want the drift to go. And what was interesting, and I find it quite funny, is that I'm pretty sure there are quite a few people that reply and never actually listening to an episode. But again, this new customers, right? Potential. That's give them what they want. So the two leading answers. One I think was comparing telcos, which is, possibly not the most interesting things for me as a potential podcaster. And the other was like more obscure tech. That sounds a little bit more interesting to me. I will try to do a bit of both, of course. The funny bit is that both options require me to actually do some work and some prep for the podcast, which is something that I've been trying to avoid. But yeah, just in my mind, it literally like the scene with Thanos saying, "I'm inevitable." That sort of work, you have to do the hard miles every now and then. And yeah, so I'm gonna try to incorporate a little bit of this into the episodes going forward. So, on that note, while we all know that there are lots of what to expect from MWC from tech point of view, so what I'm gonna discuss with you now is two tech that are not going to be big at this year's show, but that will be bigger sometimes in the future. So trying to change things a little bit. And first of all, we are talking about quantum computing, the quantum world that you want. Now, this is my first time, really trying to, read and learn a little bit about the topic. So by all means, if I'm saying something that doesn't make any sense, do comment and let me know. That's how you learn. So the quantum world is fascinating. And partially because, as I said, I really don't understand it. I find it extremely complex and difficult. But also it's fascinating partially because it's a paradox, right? Is the paradox about the moment that you see it or the moment that you understand it, you kind of break it. And I think this is what is making such a sci-fi-esque, if you want, topic to cover, which I'm trying to get, deeper and deeper into that. At the same time, there's been some fascinating stories that are loosely based on the quantum world, quantum mechanics, whatever you want. Now, definitely big one, Avengers Endgame. As I probably shouldn't tell you the story, you all know the story. But the Avengers decided to go back in time by using quantum mechanics, and then trying to change the course of the world. With the defeat that they had endured in the previous movie. So if you're a type of superhero type of movie guy or gal, yeah, that's definitely for you. And the other movie, which I've seen like long time ago, definitely needs to see it again more recently. It's called Prince of Darkness, and that's about sort of prison physics students investigating a mysterious liquid in an abandoned church. So again, loosely connected to this, I think there's more in this correlation between discussing quantum physics, technologies, and movies. But movie corner is over. So what's about quantum for super dummies? Now, in very basic, and I found this on the internet, of course. that's where you get all the information nowadays. So quantum computers, they use quantum mechanics, and they are replacing the traditional binary bit circuits with quantum particles called qubits. Now, these particles, these qubits, they have unique properties, and that enables them to effectively compute in a slightly different way. So, really, in one line, if you're thinking about quantum computers, it's like a super performing computer. And the difference is that while the bits are binary units of information, which are either a 0 or a 1, a qubit can be 0 or 1 or both at the same time. And then there are like this called superposition, I think. Then they can be linked together and called entanglement. And so effectively, this enables quantum computer to do carry on many more calculations simultaneously when a traditional computer carries effectively one calculation. Now, to give a little bit of stats, because analysts love stats, I think in December 2024, Google revealed that one of its quantum chips completed a calculation in minutes that would have taken today's most powerful supercomputer billions of years to solve. Now, I don't know if that's true. Probably it is true. Either way, it's a bit mind-blowing, right? What could potentially be like the implication? So how does quantum then comes back to more mundane tech? Yeah, effectively, the quantum world, quantum tech ties into the security world, which security is the hottest market on the planet, whether we want it or not, whether we like to talk about it or not. And it is quite important because it could break the current security system. And actually, I found out they have a day, it's like Q day, the day when the quantum computers could break the security system. And this is because modern internet security relies on tech such as RSA or elliptic curve cryptography. Don't know the specifics of that, but in a nutshell, they rely on mathematical problems that traditional computers cannot solve, and that's how they provide security. But because quantum computers are so much better, they could effectively solve those problems and break the security system. So there is a bit of a risk there, like negative risk, something for stories and such. But there is, of course, some good as well that is coming. So post-quantum cryptography is expected to replace RSA and ECC. And effectively, it is about using algorithms designed to resist these sort of quantum attacks. So it's still math-based encryptions, but it is type of encryption that quantum computer can't break easily. The fascinating things about all this stuff is that you can really dig deep in any of this. Now I had like a very broad brush type of reading through, but there's so much that you can deep dive. And the good news about the post-quantum cryptography is that it runs on normal computers. So you don't really need to have the quantum computers. It does not require any special hardware. And like government, for instance, are already adopting it. Now, the next part of the pod would have been like a bit of a short summary of some of the key, events and timeline on quantum computers, but I think that I can leave that for another episode maybe. So now let's just try to be a little bit more focused. Now, another aspect of quantum is like quantum cryptography, which uses quantum physics for security. Quantum key distribution is part of this, and again, using quantum mechanics to securely share security encryption. Again, quite I am, I'm talking about this, but honestly, it's like so difficult for me to to visualize any of this. Um, but that's probably why I should be looking into it now. Why this is not going to be part of MWC? Again, trying to get a sense, like a logical sense, into my podcast. Obviously, it's a couple of reasons. One is that it's early stage. Second is that the way that I see the market, it can only function with one big hype at a time. Now we're in the big AI hype. So there is no room for anything else. It doesn't matter how good the technology is. And you can see that with a lot of the promises, actually, telco technologies, just private 5G, network slicing, they don't matter unless there is some AI attached to it. So that's why you're not going to see, I don't expect to see much quantum talk, but this will happen in the future. And the other tech that is not going to be part, like it's not going to be a significant part of the event this year, is going to be robotics. And so, yes, I know you're going to say there's going to be robots at the show, and you will see many robot dogs, and you're going to see some robotic arms that are like sorting, different pieces of Lego. Maybe some drones, some, remote guided cars or whatever. But nothing of this is truly new. So I think the big robot conversation is going to be absent from the show in what I define in a very technical term, hardcore robotics. So all the humanoid robots, which I personally find super creepy, I don't think is gonna have like a big presence at the show. Swarm robotics, space robots, anything else that really is driving the momentum in their sector, I don't think is gonna be part of the show. And I've been flagged this by a friend of mine as so she mentioned that there is this conference, World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, and I've seen some videos, I've seen some blogs, and that's pretty impressive. And that's all about robotics. So one comment that you may say in the comment section, because I always encourage people to comment on what I'm presenting, what I'm discussing. This is a telco show, so why there should be more robots? Why doesn't make much sense. And fair enough, it's a valid point, but the way that industry is moving, sort of a telco connectivity only show will not survive, like in the long term, particularly in the age of AI. So I do think there needs to be that increase pivot into those new use cases. And there have been the conversations, right? So robots, they need pervasive connectivity, possibly to think, possibly just to be connected, to know where they are, whatever. That's conversation for another time. But there is that connection between connectivity, AI, and robotics. And I think that will develop more and more over the coming years. It's also quite important for me to try to find a real good use of AI. As much as I love AI to create stupid memes and GIFs, which is currently the only AI use case that I see, it has the potential to do something a little bit more. And I think that sort of connectivity, AI, robotics is an area absolutely to watch. And by the way, this idea of like robotics driving AI, driving connectivity, driving private 5G is something I already had a couple of speakers, discussing on the Tackle Drift. So it's not just, one idea of myself, come from myself. So please have a look at the older episodes, and my guests can have discussed that in much better terms. So quitting the technology corner, and then last section of the episode, favorite places in case you haven't been to Barcelona. Well, plenty of places. I would say for me, Parguel. If you are to Spurs, it's absolutely outstanding. So definitely recommend to go there. Everyone knows about Sagrada Familia, the Gothic Quarter, Casa Batlló. So there's plenty to choose. Just if you can, make sure, particularly if you're the first time there, to spend some time there. And again, exploring the Gothic Quarter, I think that's an easy one to do, particularly if you can, secure dinner or drinks in that area. That is nice and easy to walk around. Now, when it comes to bars and tapas, I had a few, experiences in terms like you can find a lot of good places to eat. I would say two that stood out for me, or that just when I was preparing this that came to mind, are Bodega Biarritz and Cerveceria Catalana. Those are two that are like really jumped up to mind, but you can find a lot of them. And then when it comes to bars, well, it has so many bars. Like honestly, you can just Google, can use any Google search and find some amazing bars. Two amazing cocktail bars, however, that again jumped to mind to me when I was thinking about this piece was Especiarium, which I'm definitely gonna go again this year, and Dr. Stravinsky, which I think I went last year. Both specialize on cocktails, very different style of cocktails, but both like really amazing. And I think that's it for today. So hopefully this slightly different version of the taekwondo again, experimenting, will resonate well. And hopefully you had some good tip for the show. And let's see if we can really get started with that sort of deeper dive into more obscure tech, as few of you seem to have an interest in. Anyway, that's all. Feel free to subscribe, like, comment, whatever you do with the podcast, and talk to you next time around.